Two intrepid teenagers, one 14 and one 16, came to the United States. One of them was from Poland, the other one was from Austria. Those happened to be my grandparents. They met in New York City, fell in love, got married, and through several different moves ended up here in Pueblo in 1922. My grandfather was a window cleaner, and probably every window in downtown Pueblo at one time or another had been cleaned by him. In 1947, his two sons and himself were in the Colorado window and house cleaning business. They ended up buying the building that we are in now at 621 South Union Avenue. It just so happens that that building was built in the 1800s. In the early 1900s, it was the building where Table Queen Bakery did their thing. And Table Queen Bakery supplied a good part of Pueblo with bread. We are privileged to be there even today. Since 1947, we are still in the same building. If you notice, there's a picture going to be coming up. Over the years, it used to be that people didn't want to have the old brick. They wanted to modernize things. They put steel over the brick, as we did there in the early 1970s. Because like, who wants that old brick look? We want something modern. Well, that's what they thought back then. It just so happened as years went on, we got to see pictures of what was underneath that metal, and we're like, why in the world would anybody cover this stuff up? So we tore it all off, and that's what our building looks like today. Brought it back to the old brick and put the canvas awnings on it and redid the brick down below. The neat thing is what basically the reason I'm telling you this is Aztec is basically a part of history in one way or another. The business is over 70 years old, and probably every block in Pueblo has got some kind of Aztec product in it or inside the houses that we work on. So we take great pride in what we do. We don't want people, or we want people to not only enjoy what they have, enjoy the good quality, but for generations to come that they could do the same thing. And so with that having been said, Katie's got a neat little presentation that we think we could add with our expertise and our abilities down there to beautify more than just our own niche in Pueblo. So we'll leave it up to Katie now.
We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about this project with you guys. The concept for these structures was the result of a very fun brainstorming lunch that my dad and I had over the summer. We were trying to come up with a very original and artistic design for a really big project that we were bidding on. And after we had kicked around a lot of ideas, inspiration finally struck. At this point in the summer, there were tons of flowers at their peak, and I had been raising black swallowtail and monarch butterflies for a couple of weeks. I was getting really deep into this new hobby, and I was talking about it to anyone who would listen to me. And this love of flowers and butterflies became the theme of this project. And by the end of that lunch, we were more excited for this project than any other one we had ever worked on. So when this customer decided that they wanted to go a more simple route, we were a little sad and disappointed. And we found that it really wasn't about the money that we could have made on it, but it was about the statement that could have been made with this project. Dan found that he couldn't quite let the idea go, and so he went to planning to see if they would allow us to put one of these structures in our own parking lot on Union. And to our surprise, they actually really liked the idea and said, yes, you can do that. We had no idea when we'd ever be able to actually fit it into our schedule or our budget, but at least the idea was alive again. And then a couple of weeks later, I got an email from Alexis Romero. Andrew Hayes with planning had told her about the project, and now here we are to tell you guys about it. When she asked me to present this idea to you, I considered doing lots of research about the benefits of community art gardening and nature and trying to tell you all of the reasons why it's beneficial, from mental, physical, and emotional health to economic growth, cultural understanding and identity, and a sense of belonging. But then I thought, why not give you a real life example, which is the real inspiration behind this idea? But instead of the really long email I sent to Alexis, I'll explain it to you with pictures. So this is 2216 West 26th Street. This was a HUD home that we were incredibly fortunate to get in 2014. I think it was literally the last reasonably priced house on our market. And I know what you're all thinking, but you're actually wrong. We did not buy it for that yard or that fence. And after working on that house all summer, we moved in at the end of August. And the following spring, this is what we were dealing with. A note on this yard, it is solid clay, and so pulling all these weeds by hand wasn't really realistic for us. Thankfully, we were able to get a skid steer and a dumpster and scrape it down to bare dirt. And after we had scraped it down to bare dirt, I was amazed at how beautiful just bare dirt can be. We had to fight for every single hole that we dug in this yard. We unloaded tons and tons of rock and breeze and yards of compost and mulch. And slowly things started to get better. And a couple of things started happening. Not only did we have a yard that we started feeling proud of, but our neighbors started feeling proud of it too. And we had neighbors coming over and telling us how nice things were looking. People who didn't even live in our neighborhood would pull over and tell us that they had been watching the progress on their daily commute. And it was an amazing feeling to not only get to see the good for our hard work, but to have validation from the community and have all these opportunities to meet people that lived near us. We got to commiserate with them over the stubborn weeds that grow in our area, and we were able to bond over where to buy plants and landscaping materials. One of the greatest compliments I've had is having an elderly neighbor come over and ask me for gardening advice. In addition to this growing feeling of being valued in our community, we were also creating habitat. Instead of this giant weed patch, we now had an oasis of pollinator-friendly flowers and nice damp mulch that toads can live in. And there is a toad up there that's covered by the Zoom screen. Like a lot of people, I grew up afraid of bees. I assumed they were these murderous little creatures, and if you got too close to them, you're gonna get stung. But now I had all these plants in the yard that were just absolutely covered in bees, and I realized that while I was out working hard in the yard, these bees were hard at their own work, and we could absolutely occupy the same place in harmony. And so if you'll notice this picture that has the black box around it, how many of you have had a kid in your life approach you with a couple of catalogs and eager eyes wanting you to buy some junk for a school fundraiser that you don't really need? That was a situation I found myself in with my little cousin, and thankfully there were two things in those catalogs that I thought I could actually put to good use. One of them was a bag of tulip bulbs, and the other was a bag of drumstick allium. And it was very serendipitous because I had never heard of ornamental allium before, and now they're some of my absolute most favorite flowers. So if you're ever in a position of having to look through a fundraising catalog, look for the flower bulbs. The following summer, after having planted those flowers, or planted those bulbs, this is what I saw in my yard one day. Several bees had jammed themselves inside this allium and they didn't seem to be moving, and I was wondering what's going on here. So I posted a picture of this on Instagram, and my mom replied that they're probably worker bees that don't live very long, and they'll often go to their favorite flower to die. And I had two thoughts. One, how sad, and two, how awesome, a flower burial. And it made me realize that here I was in my 20s and I knew absolutely nothing about these creatures. But now that I had so many around me constantly, I realized that I wanted to know everything about them. So flash forward a few weeks and I'm sitting in the cafe at Barnes & Noble and I'm reading this book. And I was amazed because I never knew that just any dummy could pick up a book and become a beekeeper, but that's exactly what happened. And once I had the bees, I had a new subject to bond with my neighbors over. Once our across the street neighbor knew that we had bees, she told me that she had started rescuing the bees out of her dog's water dish in case they were mine. When I shared fresh honey with her, we were able to marvel together at the miracle of the whole process. I was also able to give some amateur hive tours and bee lessons to friends and family members. Several young children got to see the inside of the hive and taste honey straight out of the comb. These kids will grow up knowing that bees are not something to be afraid of, but they're something to treasure and protect. And I can't think of a better way to create a conservationist. Experiences like this also inform how you spend your money. I dove into bees and beekeeping, and I came out a wiser consumer. Because once you care about one aspect of the ecosystem or the environment, it's really impossible to just stop there. And I didn't stop there. I wanted to plant as many things as possible in my yard so that it would be a veritable bee buffet. But more happy coincidences started happening, and I discovered that some of the things I had planted were also host plants for butterflies. And this past summer, I found over 30 black swallowtail caterpillars on my fennel and dill plants, and I raised them in mesh cages. And then, because I never know when to stop, I also raised over 40 monarch caterpillars. I couldn't contain my excitement about this new hobby, and I eventually got my family involved too. My dad started hunting for eggs and caterpillars every chance he got, and he was able to raise several monarchs and release them at the end of summer also. And then after looking through a butterfly book I had bought my niece, my 9-year-old niece made a very important statement to her mom. She said, "Mom, did you know you can get butterflies in your yard by planting the right flowers?" She now has the right seeds and she is ready to plant her own butterfly garden in the spring. I'm just gonna grab a quick drink here. What's amazing about what we've done in our yard is that we now have a whole ecosystem right outside our front door. I don't have to leave my property to be in nature. And as you guys are all probably aware, the benefits of nature are endless. Working in the yard is a great stress reliever. It can be good exercise. It provides a lot of opportunities to be creative and to problem solve. But even when I'm not working in the yard, just being outside and observing all of these different plant and animal life brings me a tremendous amount of joy and satisfaction and just a sense of well-being and being connected with the world around me. And the great thing about this is that people in our community do not have to scrape their yard down to bare dirt and dump in tons of time and money. If you have a little bit of soil, even horrible pure clay soil, some milkweed seeds, and some water, anyone can have monarch habitat in their own yard, and boom, you're a conservationist. And this creates a fantastic opportunity for kids and adults alike to get involved with some citizen science. Monarch Watch is an organization that has been monitoring the population and migration pattern of monarchs for years. And one way they accomplish this is by providing tags that you can order and put on the wings of butterflies that you either raise or catch. And these tags help researchers track the migration pattern. And the ways that a project like this could benefit our community are many and far-reaching. Educating kids about the monarch life cycle could encourage them to get outside to go hunt for eggs and caterpillars. It could encourage them to read more books. It could expose them to other insects that they might like even better, like maybe the adorable milkweed beetle. It could encourage them to start a pollinator garden of their own, or to grow their own food and then eat that food, which would definitely be healthier than anything they could get anywhere else. And I found that there are so many rabbit holes you can fall down once you begin pursuing a new interest, and I recommend falling down as many of those holes as possible. At the very least, you'll learn something new, but you might just find your life's calling. And this is what our goal is for these structures. Our hope is that these structures can be a catalyst in the community that will encourage education, inspiration, and conservation through beautification. And so, like Alexis said, originally this was a project that we were thinking of just for our own parking lot. But then when we got talking with her, we thought it would be so cool if we could do a minimum of 4 structures installed at multiple locations along the walk. The first one being at the start, and then the last one being in our parking lot at Aztec. And these structures will be designed in a way that will encourage people to complete the entire walk. The whole series will represent the entire life cycle of a monarch, with each structure representing one stage. Each structure can have a sign that will encourage them to proceed to the next location with like a map showing them where they are and where the next one is. When people approach them, they'll see a full color illustration explaining that stage of the monarch life cycle and the features of that particular sculpture. And really, the sky is the limit with other features that these structures could have. Adding bumblebees, honeybees, ladybugs, aphids, and milkweed beetles would increase the visual appeal and educational value even more. And the combination of these larger-than-life displays, along with the signage, will not only educate the community about these plants and insects, but it will also urge conservation practices, such as allowing a space for a milkweed patch in your own yard and eliminating pesticides that are harmful to our pollinators. And interacting with these sculptures could inspire people in a whole variety of ways. Some may simply decide that they want to learn more or to share what they have learned. Others might feel inspired to start a garden, and maybe seeing these structures will be a push for someone to pursue an artistic endeavor of their own. And how cool would it be if these structures went Instagram famous and drove people to Pueblo to see them? This could drive new business to our local shops and restaurants. If I have learned anything in my experience with my yard, it's if you plant it, they will come. And so we hope that the same thing will be true of these structures.